Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. On Races of the Worlds today, we are going to take a look at the Komalians. Now, Komalians are a reptilian-based race. They are semi-aquatic. Okay, meaning they do have partially webbed hands and feet. Okay, they have a set of flaps that come back over their ears. Okay, to completely block off there, so they don't end up with water on the eardrum, obviously. They also have an inner eyelid. This enables them to see underwater. Needless to say, they see in very dim light. Okay, they are carnivorous. So much as they will eat plants from time to time. More often than not, that's accidental, as in they're trying to eat something that's hiding under the tree, so they eat the whole thing. Their mouth it does stick out a fair chunk, like it sticks out about yay far. But like an alligator, the teeth are actually stuck, the teeth actually hang out a little on either side. Okay, with a somewhat larger nose, much like the alligator does. Okay, where the nose is set at the front. Okay, but it is not set up. It really boils down to a couple of slits, but the important factor from that standpoint is they literally evolved, they are a very hostile race. But the problem with it, there's a number of problems with it. They are heterosexual. Okay, they do mate for life, and their children, although they're born in eggs, are protected by the parents. Okay, so this is one of the big differences between them and some of the other reptilian races. These guys do know who their parents are, and they are raised. They grow up in a very simple fashion. Okay, they are taught right from the get go that might is right, but they operate on contract law, meaning you give your word. That's what you're doing. Now, there's a neat little hiccup in that because they also are mercenaries and slave traders. You don't have to like it. That's just the way they are. That's the way their entire society is built. Therefore, bribery is acceptable. But here's the thing. They work on contract law. So you sign a contract and you're supposed to follow it. If you choose to accept a bribe and you get caught at it, then you end up going in one-on-one combat with whoever you had the contract with, or their designated champion. In either event, whoever wins is the one that gets to go through. There's never charges as far as legal charges go. You never end up with people that have been bribing ending up in prison. Okay, they either end up dead or they got away with it. It's pretty much that simple. Okay, they do believe in one higher power. Okay, and that higher power they call the Great Drake. Now, if you look back in their history, well, we'll get back to their history in a second. As I said, they are they are very highly aggressive. They have a military societal structure. Okay, much as with many societies, you have kings, queens, you have presidents, whatever. Okay, in the Komalian community, they have a general. That is their leader. Now, the general is not taken out by elections. This is not a democracy. If you desire to lead the community, you're going to have to take out the general in single combat. Okay. Therefore, as you can well imagine, dueling is acceptable. Okay. Now, bear in mind, these guys grow their own armor. Not to the level of some of the other reptilian races. These guys would have something closer to reinforced heavy leather. Okay. As compared to a full carapace. But they do tend to use they make their own, but they build interlocking armor. And they are very good at it. These guys, because they're military based, all of their evolutionary steps, all of their societal progression is built on combat. Okay, on combat, on trade. Okay, they are designed for this. They are at direct odds with the Laborians, and we'll get to them on another day. Okay, but the Komalians themselves are an interesting race. Okay, the ships that they use are whatever they can get a hold of. They don't have a specific ship of their own for interstellar travel. They are capable of interstellar travel. They certainly understand it. But more often than not, they hire on as mercenaries to get around. Oddly enough, they hire on as mercenaries if the fancy takes their mind. They'll commandeer the ship. Which, by the way, is against the law, but that's okay because the guy they stole it from doesn't live long enough to argue. Komalians are very organized, very focused. They are, how do I put this? They do use high-tech weaponry, okay, as in much as they prefer close combat. When they are outnumbered, they will quite readily use sonic-based and light-based weaponry. Okay, they've even got into some magnetic-based, as in very high-tech. Now, when you take into consideration they're making their own armor, okay, they are making armor designed to counteract their own weapons, which means they are already ablative, as in laser weapons, light-based weapons will not affect them as much as they do other people's, because they're designed to refract that light. They usually have double layered armor. Okay, creating an extra cushion of either air, reducing impact, or some other absorption material, reducing ballistic penetration. Okay, in other words, you take a layer of hard armor, you put in a layer of gel, and you put another layer of hard armor over top of the outside, and all of a sudden you've got something that is going to have a heck of a time penetrating. Their armor is difficult to get through. Okay, now they are a powerful entity physically speaking. Okay, their tails, the ones that have tails, are not designed for combat. They are a balance point. Okay, now this does not mean they're not a suitable weapon, because what they end up doing is armoring the weapon, armoring the tail, so that it's still articulated and move necessary for balance. They just can't use it as a weapon. Mind you, if you've got tail sticking out behind you and you turn in a hurry, you may be able to sweep their legs out from under them anyway. Okay, they do live in a society where literally the general runs a society, but in each family unit, it is usually matriarchal. Although there are variations, and the reason there are variations is because might is right. Sometimes a male, especially a male that is underdeveloped, physically speaking, may be wise enough to actually mate with a female that is built like a freight train. Now, from the male standpoint, she's the muscle, but that's where you end up with that odd situation, and this is why I say every race has variations. In a situation like that, you've got a mutual agreement. Okay, what you've got there is a father that is very wise, very crafty, but doesn't have a lot of strength. So he sets things in motion, and the mother is the defender. Okay, she's the enforcer. Okay, now, of course, that being said, as I mentioned, in a case where you're called out on a duel, you can either fight yourself or you can assign a legal proxy, your champion, if you will. In a case like that, obviously, if somebody calls the father out into a fight, he'll call his wife out and let her do the damage. Okay. Now, there's not a whole lot of difference between the males and females. Okay. Most of the difference between male and female is in your coloring. Males are a lot brighter in color, usually. Okay. Women tend to be a little bit more subdued in their coloring. Okay. But that can vary. Again, ultimately it boils down to this. The more muscle they have, the less color they have. No, got that backwards. The more muscle they have, the more color they have. Okay. I think that's the way it works. Yeah, pretty much. The really colorful ones are the ones that are the stronger ones. Intriguingly enough, the same ones that are the ones that are duller, or the brighter the color, the more dangerous they are in a lot of ways. Sometimes it's muscle. Sometimes it is because of the poison that some of them have generated. Now, it's very rare for a Komalian to actually have poison. Although, if they bite you, assuming you survive, because of the amount of carrion that they eat, their mouth, they do have a lot of disease that they carry, as well as on their claws. Again, these guys are not the, shall we say, most sanitary individuals. Okay. Picture, if you will, well, don't, because that's just going to throw you off. Their eating habits are, to say the least, a little less than functional. If you ever watched the Muppets or Sesame Street, watch the way that either Animal or Cookie Monster eat. That'll give you an idea of their eating habits. Okay, because their hands are thick, so they do not do a lot of fine work. The bigger ones don't do much fine work at all. But the smaller, and this is why it's usually the females that run the households, because the females are the ones that have the finer fingers. Their talons are a lot shorter. Okay, whereas an adult, like a male, will have talons that are that long, sometimes longer. Okay, whereas the females will just have essentially something that looks similar to a cat claw, enabling them to do fine work a lot more readily. So your females tend to be the scientists, they tend to be the architects, they tend to be the artists. Okay. When you're dealing with the males, they tend to be your combat specialists, your big grunt workers, the heavy lifters. Okay, and like I said, this can vary depending on the individual. But they take your build and the level of your intellect and decide where to put you. And now understand, in Komalian society, if you happen to be fine built and low intelligence, okay, the odds are you're going to get used as a meat grinder. As in for somebody else to figure out how to kill something. You're going to be part of the training exercise and you're not going to live very long. Okay. Now the neat part with these guys is when they are born. Okay, they're born in eggs. Okay, and they hatch like normal Terran reptiles. Okay. But it's the parents that stick around to watch over them. And therefore, they make sure that the newborns don't kill the ones still in the eggs, because obviously they want to have all of their kids. Okay, but they start off right from the get-go teaching the kids this idea that might is right. Okay, they also are taught contract law. If you give your word, you follow it. If you're going to break your word, as in if you're going to accept a bribe, then you're the one that has to deal with the consequences. As the saying goes, you do have free will, but you've got the freedom to do what you choose. But you do not have the freedom to get away with everything you choose, with the consequences of whatever you choose to do. This is where the idea of contract law comes in. If you sign a contract with Komalians, you sign a contract, that is what you're supposed to follow. And there are those that are known for breaking contract, and those ones don't get work very well. Okay, because once you lose the trust of the community, getting work becomes a bit problematic. But that's where you get the marauding bands that become violent contenders for the throne. Okay, because they learn that that might is right. But since their word is totally useless, they literally go with survival in numbers. The strong guy ends up taking the lead, either the strong guy or the guy that's got the fastest brain. Okay, but so you've got two cultures that have very clearly developed. The one side of them will follow the contract to the law, to the letter. The other one will do everything under the sun to break the law, and they will kill everybody they have to make that happen. Okay, now needless to say, this means there is a bit of a contention in society. Much like you have in Terran society, where you have the law-abiding people and the ones that consistently break the law, and they're at odds, and the ones that actually don't break the law but are not tied into the heart of the legal system are caught in the middle. This is why I say the fact that they've got better toys does not mean that they have a better society per se. They do have a one world government, but that one world government is run by a general. Whether it's male or female depends entirely on who got the upper hand. Okay, they do have their monetary system, even on their own planet, is based on work hours logged. Okay, and that gets put into a global database, so that wherever you're doing work, wherever you're filling a contract, okay, whatever you were agreed, and sometimes contracts boil down to, we will add X number of hours as an X number of hours bonus to your pay. Okay, and that's how you do it. And I mean, when you're dealing with going to get a bite to eat at a restaurant, if you will, again, it just simply is logged out of a central database where you simply log off X number of hours to get whatever food you're getting. Now, here's the funny thing: the one that always goes hand in hand with computer systems. What happens to hackers? Well, that's no problem at all. They literally end up. Hackers have one of two things happen. Either the main government hires them and keeps them on the go to make sure that the system is running right, or they're terminated. If a hacker is caught, then what ends up happening is they get put aside, they get put into lockup until a government official comes to them and either goes, okay, here's a test, deal with this. If you pass the test, we'll hire you. If you don't, we'll kill you. And it's literally at the end of the amount of time they're given. If they've succeeded in the test, they're hired on the spot. They're released from jail. The government gets them. Okay, if they fail the timing test, well, quite frankly, they don't get out of jail. They just go to the meat grinder. Quite literally, they go to the meat grinder while they're still alive. As I said, very, very, very violent race. Okay, but it is controlled violence. The other thing about them, the other thing with the Komalians, okay, is if you go into their ancestry, like into their way back, way, way, way back, their ancestors were the Drakes. And I will get to the Drakes at another time, but in a nutshell, the Drakes expanded their business, their empire too far, too fast. And they ended up cutting two branches off of their empire. They had to just cut communication. Net result, you ended up with the Komalians, who ended up on a forested world. Okay, where their primary residency was on a forested world. So they ended up developing accordingly. Okay, on their own branch and ended up as Komalians. Okay, where they took offense to the fact that they were left behind. Okay, and they went far more onto the barbaric, onto the violent side of it. The other branch that broke off was the Srazazians. Okay, But the Strazazians held on to the ideals in a lot of ways that the Drakes did, as in they took the honor-bound route. Okay, and again, we'll deal with the Strazazians later. Actually, I think I've already done one on them. I may have on the Drakes. But with the Komalians, they evolved and became very, very retaliatory. They trust contract because they've been taught, and they learned this amongst themselves, not from the Drakes. The Drakes, as far as they're concerned, they were dropped off. They were discounted. So they do not look at anybody's society as being better than their own. Okay, this is why they have such a violent approach, is they were left behind in their eyes. They did not develop interstellar travel per se. They took what they knew, okay, then because they had descended from Drakes in the first place. So they took that information, they worked with what they had, but they found it far easier when they started running into other races to take the other races' ships, to enslave the other races to improve the ships, and then they would learn from the slaves as the slaves improved their ships. It was sort of, okay, you build the ship now show me how you did it. Okay, kind of like forced technological evolution. Okay, they are not above hijacking. They are not above any of the, if you will, less than law-abiding methods. Komalians are not somebody that you necessarily want to get in business with. But a lot of races do. Because when they get their mindset, if you pay them well, and that's the whole catch, make sure you're paying them well. Because if you pay them well enough, nobody can outpay you, can outbid you. And thereby you've got their loyalty. Or more to the point, you've got their contract. That's how things work in their world. And that's why they will trust the dollar value. Okay, or if you will, the work hour value. Okay, but and they will trust that far more than the word. They'll listen to the word, and then they'll go, okay, you pay, we do. You don't pay, you're in trouble. Because then we make our own rules up. Okay, but if you pay them properly, you don't have a problem. If you don't pay them properly, somebody else will outbid you. Okay. All in all, you're looking at an interesting race, if you like the violent side of things. But they do make Terran ideas of an underworld look mild. Okay. For instance, if you end up with a Komalian overlord that decides he's taking out a rival, he doesn't bother going in there with small guns. He will bomb the place from orbit. Okay, which is why what they have done, many of the overlords, even though the world is run by a general, there are a bunch of little overlords as well. But the general has to keep them in order, in balance. And this is why, when I talk about them having a one world government, the one world government has the firepower. They understand that the other side of the society is necessary. The underworld is necessary. Okay, it's just the way the society has always been. So the government does go, we know that exists, and we're not controlling it per se, so much as making certain that it does not take over the government. Okay. So the government contains the overlords. It doesn't control them. It's not like the overlords go, okay, we're dealing in drugs. We're dealing in mind control drugs. So we're going to give the government X number of dollars out of that. Okay. The government doesn't deal with the logistics behind it. They go, okay, we know what you're up to. Leave our people alone, because if you go after our people, we will bomb the daylights out of your stronghold, and there won't be anything left of your drug trade. Okay, now we know the drug trade will be picked up by somebody else. Same issue applies to slavery. Okay, And the overlord, the government in particular, understands the idea of slavery and absolutely condones it. But the government works on contract. Meaning, if they pick up somebody else, if a government ship picks up a member of a different race, they will put them into a contract. Now, the problem is, of course, the other member of the other race may not understand the contract, because much as they'll explain the basics of it, they certainly don't go into the fine details. Okay, now if you're lucky enough to get one that does, then you can get a pretty sweet contract, because they do protect the people they hire. Okay, but they don't control the underworld. Okay, and it's just that simple. It's a complicated setup, but it's one that they've worked out a balance for. Overall, the government will arrange treaties, and this is why they got involved with the consortium in the first place, because the consortium went, okay, we'll leave you to run your world and your empire as is. Here's the stipulations of what you're not allowed to do. And here they are in clear detail, and of course the general at the time looked at it and went, okay, we can work with this. Sign the contract, done deal. They're now a member of the consortium. It was laid out very nicely, very solidly. Every once in a while there's a question that comes up, and it goes into deliberation and what have you. But that's how they operate. Now, on that note, since I keep I keep all my videos down to the half-hour mark. Okay, around that anyway. So I'm going to leave you with that for the time being. Okay, and in the next few days, I will get another race sorted around and bring it out. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.